Show that to John Burns. Hey! Pray with me. Heavenly Father, here we are again asking you to forgive us of our sins. To say thank you for everything you do for us, for all the blessings, all the gifts, but most of all for being there for us in the good times and in the bad. Keep your hand on us and lead us as we care about the business of this state. Let what we do please you, and forgive us when we make mistakes. I ask these things in the name of the Prince of Peace. Amen. Y'all, this ain't the first grade. I hope everybody heard Mr. Earhart yesterday, and I hope that you took notes. In there, out of there. Mr. Hitchens, remember that. You're going to have to get up here. Never mind, you weren't listening then anyway, so it don't matter. Mr. Battles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, modified structure, almost at the bottom is House Bill 624, which is Georgia's legislative retirement system legislation.
There's no questions. Thank you. Mr. Lunsden.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I bring to you House Bill 760, page 1, last item on page 1. This bill simply allows insurers to notify an insured of any change to the policy or policy language by means of a change notice rather than a non-renewal and a new offer.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Nimmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 927 is on page 4 on the back of your blue sheet. It is a bipartisan supported measure for the Department of Family and Children's Services to provide certain information to caregivers on behalf of the homes that will be open and the children that need care. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I appreciate the request you granted me in the beginning. I do realize it's out of order, but with my absence tomorrow, I'd like to go ahead and ask this committee to take into consideration House Bill 642 that I hope will be on your sheet tomorrow. It'll be the measure to create a special improvement district around the Atlanta Beltline. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that the only one you got that's not on there?
No, sir, but the rest are trying to get themselves through committee today, I hope. I hope to be back, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Watson, come up here on front. Mr. Harden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 830, toward the bottom of page 3, modified structured rule, dangerous drug update, which just simply adds to those drugs that doctors can prescribe for conditions for this year.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Hitchens.
Page 2 under modified open rule, second one down, House Bill 809. It's just color schemes on state patrol cars to keep it in conformance with the law. The second one is about 4 more down, House Bill 867. It's just update for the Peace Officers Standards and Training Council.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, looking at page 3 under modified structured rule, HB 886, just making some changes and updates to the gate program. Also, HR 1090, transferring some property from Department of Natural Resources to GDOT for some road and bridge improvements.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, on 886, the ones that you said made changes and updates to the gate program, what does it actually change and update?
We are allowing currently right now the Department of Revenue cannot communicate with the Department of Agriculture when we have situations. So we want to allow them to be able to communicate together so they can talk about good things and bad things. We're also going to go to a 3-year card for all of our producers and card holders to at a cost of $150.
How much is a card? How long is it now, a card?
It's 1 year for $25 currently.
That's all it does?
And we're raising the threshold to $5,000. Currently the threshold is $2,500. And a lot of it is just trying to increase the integrity of the program and make sure that it is going to be sustainable and around a long time.
When you say increase the threshold, that means that you have to buy at least $5,000 to get the tax exemption?
You have to have an aggregate of $5,000. Currently it's $2,500, but we're going to $5,000 in total sales.
Thank you.
Nope, no more questions. Mr. Ridley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 761 is under modified structure on page 3, about halfway down. And what this is doing is, last year we did the electronic title transfer, and this year is making an adjustment to it to where the car dealers can go back to the courthouse if they choose.
Mr. A. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, is it not true that in the committee, the Commissioner of Revenue said that the gratis system still had plenty of capacity, that these small owners that's been saddled with this higher cost of $100+ more to get a title, that they could go back and it wouldn't be a problem?
Yes, sir. That's exactly. And she actually worked with me on this, and I'd like to commend them for their efforts and sitting down with us and understanding what the problem was and coming up with a solution for it.
Thank you.
Is it not true that your tax commissioners are also really interested in getting this back?
Yes, sir. I've also got full support from the Georgia Tax Commissioners Association, and got a letter of support for them for this bill.
No more questions. Thank you.
you.
Mr. Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the second page, 8th bill down is House Bill 956. This is the first rewrite of the Veterinary Practices Act in a good many years. One of the changes in this bill is to provide Georgia code to be in line with the federal statutes regarding the veterinary feed directive. It also does not further restrict producers' abilities, livestock producers' abilities to practice sound animal husbandry practices.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 1, bottom of open rule, HR 1017, just a resolution recognizing dyslexia as a problem, and we need to address it.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Gravely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 889 is on the very back page under modified structure. It's the first bill on the back page. What this bill would do, it would provide that heart attack, stroke, and vascular rupture suffered by a public safety officer would make those 3 events qualified for indemnification for the public safety officer, where the event would have resulted in partial or in permanent disability or death.
I think part of the problem is who's doing the indemnifying here?
The state would be doing the indemnification under the
much,
current indemnification protocol.
How much is that indemnification?
Indemnification for a partial disability would be $35,000. For a permanent disability would be $75,000. For death, $150,000 paid out to the spouse of the public safety personnel.
30, 35, 75, 150?
Yes, sir. 150 only in the case of a death due to heart attack, stroke, or vascular rupture.
Okay, no more questions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to make all them folks mad at me because I may need them one day.
They're already mad at me. You don't have to worry about it.
House Bill 489, it's the third one down under modified open. What it does is require counties, municipalities, and school boards to advertise on the Georgia Procurement Registry for free if it's a goods and services over $10,000 or construction projects over $100,000. Gives the vendors and contractors a whole lot more opportunities to bid and save tax money to the people in those entities.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you HB 866, which is on the third page, second from the bottom, which would eliminate fees that we would pay to freeze or thaw our credit reports.
Third page. Third page. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cobble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring House Bill 940 under modified structured rule, page 4, last page, about 10 down from the top. This agency bill for the Department of Driver Services changes 4 shalls to mays and adds 2 mays. It gives some operational flexibility in how they issue interim driver's licenses. And we need that flexibility due to some vendor constraints as they're changing vendors.
In support, Driver Services came to see me and showed me and told me what the situation was, and I think it would be advisable to put this on the floor and vote on it. Thank you, Mr. Cobble. No more questions. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 bills today. HB 817 on page 3, just above, right next to the third hole punch. This is the bill that I got a substitute drafted for. It changed the word "or" to an "and" to better approach the difficulties that private investigators are having regarding window tinting. And then HB 702 is a student loan repayment fund called the STEM Defense Support Fund for STEM students who go to work at one of our defense installations in the state of Georgia. It pays up to $25,000 on their student loans over 5 years.
Mr. Earhart.
Representative Clark, I'm supportive of what you do, although I'm a little, maybe I'm catching up. That those service cancelable loans are in the budget unit that I have responsibility for, and we haven't even heard that we need to anticipate that appropriation. Can you tell me where the request is on that?
So this 702 doesn't appropriate any funds. It just creates the position in the budget, and then in subsequent years we would have to come back and request funding in appropriations. So this bill does not appropriate any funds.
Okay, let's you and I have a conversation. I understand what you're doing, but there's a little more to it than that.
Okay.
what we've got is a substitute on this thing that says committee of rules substitute on 817 LC 411465S. I think you should explain what the difference between what that one is and what we've got again.
Okay, so on 817, the only change to the substitute was on line 19. It changed the word "or," where it says "owned or" to "owned and operated."
Okay, I know what we did. It's not like I hadn't got 150 of these things to look at. Mr. Earhart, anything? You're still on here.
No, still.
There you go.
It doesn't want to go off.
You're still on. There you go, you're off. No more questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams, just 1 second. Okay, Mr. Williams, wait a second. Mr. Williams.
Representative Smith. My bill HB 852 can be found on the second page, 5 down, under modified open rule. What that bill will do is that it will allow students that move to another school's attendance zone to finish out their school year at their initial public school.
852?
HB 852. Second page under modified open rule, 5 down.
Okay. Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, if I understood you correctly, you said if a student moves to another county, for example, no?
Not another county, within the same county and another school's attendance zone.
So if you move from one high school attendance zone to another, even though you've moved, you can stay where you were?
Absolutely.
Does it affect anything about the other way around, that going to another high school zone outside your own zone?
It doesn't deal with that, but if I'm not mistaken, another representative, I think a few years back, had a bill to deal with that.
Maybe
so as long as you paid the tuition, you will be able to attend that school outside of your county.
And does it mandates this to the local school system, or is it a may?
It is a may.
A may. Thank you.
No more questions, thank you. Ms. Dickerson.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Open rule, the first House Bill 513. This enhances the safe haven law.
Do the number again.
513 is the first one on open rule, page 1.
Okay. No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Silcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under modified structure on the third page, House Bill 732. This is the Attorney General's bill to broaden the definition of sex trafficking. And then I also have on the last page, House Bill 909. And this is the Department of Public Health's request to designate hospitals for levels of maternal and neonatal care.
Ms. Silcox, I'm going to ask you sometime today come by my office on 909.
Yes, sir.
No more questions, thank you. Mr. Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first bill I want to talk about is on the back page, page 4, second one under structured rule, HB 482. This bill would allow a very small percentage, 1/4 of 1% to be exact, of students from several disadvantaged situations who are not performing well in the public school to be able to exercise an option to take that state funding and use it for other educational purposes.
Next one.
The next one is on page 3, right by the second from the top, hole punch 762. This would, it deals with age-appropriate sexual abuse and assault awareness. If you read the paper today, there was a situation that this bill would have addressed to allow students to know what they should do in case of abuse or assault.
When we got kindergarten listed here, kindergarten, excuse me, are we talking 4-year-old or 5-year-old?
We are talking kindergarten. I wish we weren't, but unfortunately most of the abuse that we're talking about takes place under the age of 7, and so kids need to be prepared as early as possible. It would be age appropriate. Teachers would receive training in the proper way to communicate that to kids at a very young age.
No more questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shaw comes to the front of the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I apologize, I was in a committee. House Bill 754 deals with reinsurance. Our domestic reinsurers in the state allows them to separate their risk to better manage their portfolios. And also House Bill 843. This is a military-friendly bill, applies to some tax credits, job tax credits for industrial parks in our counties that house a military base.
You probably need to come by and explain that bill. No more questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, bring to you House Bill 689 on the first page under modified open rules 6 up. This is banking and finance. This is authorizing sums held for deceased intestate to be paid out for funeral expenses and change certain provisions. That bill and law is into effect now. I have met with people from the insurance industry and from the banking industry. I allowed them to make changes to this bill, how they would like it to operate and how they would like it to read. We compromised on 45 days and they were very satisfied. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
If they've got a life insurance policy for at least $10,000, or if they've got $10,000 in the bank, that means that, and somebody dies and does not have a will or what they want done with their money, it means that the funeral home can apply for or get the $10,000, and who do they apply for it to?
It means they can apply for it, and after 45 days, then the bank could pay it. That protects the bank in case a Social Security benefit had been paid into that account. It gives Social Security time to pull that back, so the bank is not liable for any shortage of funds because they had made a payment. And the banking industry was very satisfied with the 45 days. That gave them plenty of time for things to cross and be taken care of.
Mr. Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, you may have addressed this, and I haven't looked closely at the bill. My concern is the timing. And there are often times where you have heirs to an estate that don't appear until later. The timing on that is very individual. It's a very fact-specific situation. You could have people in different time zones, and I'm just worried about the logistics of all of a sudden we have this direct payment line between an institution and a funeral home before an heir has been located and all of the process, and then and it really is a process in between that time.
Yes, sir. What this does, there's actually a form that goes with this bill that's now being used from this banking bill that went into effect in 1996. Then the limit was $10,000. So the limit has not changed. But what happens is, as a funeral home is meeting with the family, you pretty much find out who the heirs are. And a lot of times the people are in town and they sign off on this form for you to carry to the bank. And this is for people who are dying intestate. There will be no reason for a will to be set up.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman? May I follow up?
Yeah.
Thank you. And the concern is if they're intestate and there's a dispute within, my concern is if there's a dispute within the family, what then?
Well, the person has been buried, so nothing can be changed. So everybody in the family has signed off on the funeral for the burial to take place. So you can't go back and undo to redo. So all of that has taken place, and of course sometimes this might come up that they don't agree, but the law now states that this can still be done. This is just shortening the amount of time from 90 days to 45 days.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
No more questions.
Another bill, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, second one down, the death investigation. This is giving authorization to the GBI Chief Medical Examiner to inter John Doe and Jane Doe's skeletal remains. The GBI has run out of storage space at their morgue. These remains have been held for 35, 40 years, and there's no financial impact to the state. The GBI has the money in their budget to take care of this at this time.
No more questions. Thank you.
Have one last bill, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Williams, how many bills you gonna have this session?
I've got to earn the people's money to pay, Mr. Chairman.
With the bills you've been giving me, you ain't earning it.
Well, doing my best, sir. I'm still on that learning curve. This is the 9th one down on the back page. This is the one that's going to help everyone. This is extended this is the golden nugget, Mr. Chairman. This extends the HOPE grant from 7 years to 15 years. This passed unanimous out of higher education yesterday. This allows people who life got in the way, whether it was a baby, divorce, whatever, that they, or military, that they can continue their education so that they can become productive members of our society, sir.
That used to be the way it was, and several years back we changed it. When did we do that? 11. And the reasonings in 11 for us changing it back were it was the amount of money we had in there, I think is what it was in the recession. So what this does is it runs it back up. Does it run it, what do you tell me, to an age, or how many more years?
From 7 to 15. What we have from futurist and from predictions, we're going to be 1 million school teachers short by the year 2020. We're going to be 1 million RNs short by the year 2020. This allows people who are working jobs to continue their education, taking a course at a quarter or a semester, so that they can, move forward and contribute.
No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, which is under modified open, I believe. Yes, modified open, page 2. HR 1107, that is the urging resolution asking the Department of Economic Development and other relevant agencies to recruit the commercial space industry in Georgia. Also, I'm asking for, again, HR 888, that's to convert a study committee to study the possibility of converting closed rural hospitals into veterans' homes.
No questions, thank you. Mr. Holcomb.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 745, it's on the first page, 8th down under modified open, and it would allow a victim of domestic violence to break a lease without early termination penalty.
No questions, thank you. Mr. Clark.
Good morning, Chairman, and to the committee members. I have two bills today I'm asking for. First bill is page 1 under modified open, third from the bottom, House Bill 750. And that's just to allow those veterans who have served honorably to be eligible to get a driver's license. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
No questions, next.
And the second bill is page 2 under modified structured. And that would, and it's House Bill 401, and that would just allow a motorcycle rider to use a headset. And currently right now, that would be illegal. And with like GPSs and all that, it's more dangerous to look down on your phone. And so they put the headset in, and plus also with the engine being so loud, it's not like they can hear well anyways. So it's really a safety issue. And my sister rides motorcycles, and she uses the headphones, which are illegal, but it's going to save lives. But a cop could pull you over for having a headset on, listen to the GPS, and so it's just creating more safety and protecting lives.
I just saw a state patrolman back here in the back. What's your sister's name?
I forget.
No questions.
Thank you, Chairman.
Ms. Thomas.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I briefly looked at the blue sheet, and I don't think I saw my bill, but it's House Bill 765, hit and run. I did turn it in yesterday before 4.
When did you turn it in?
Right around 5 minutes to 4 yesterday.
You lie.
All right, well, thank you so much.
The bill has not been reported yet. Mr. Laricchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few, if I may, starting with on the very back page under structured rule, House Bill 793 is the sales and use tax exemption on the construction materials for the Georgia Aquarium, $100 million expansion, and a museum in Cartersville. It's a $30 million investment there. House Bill 793.
No questions, go to the next one.
All right, same one, HB under structured rule, back page, House Bill 871. It is a tax parity bill for manufactured housing. It is a portion of sales tax exemption on the state part of the taxes only if at the time of purchase that manufactured home is converted into real property.
I'm going to leave you alone, no questions.
One more, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Dadgum.
This one is on page 313 from the top. It's House Bill 797. This is on an existing specialty license plate. It is not a request for a new one. Just the aquarium, because of the amount of sales taxes that are paid at the time that they purchase a ticket, and because of this $100 million expansion on the aquarium, they wanted to look at redistribution of the funds for those tags because they partner with the University of Georgia, colleges, public school systems, private school systems for education, preservation, conservation, and research. House Bill 797. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Was that a tag bill?
It is not for a new tag. It is an existing tag.
Oh, let's.
Only because they love the children and want to partner with
There
them.
you go. We love the children. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love you.
And so far, I'll have to let y'all know that he has provided the best tasting bribe that I got. Ms. Chandler.
So I need to work on a bribe. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, you come in there, you came empty-handed the other day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have two bills. The first one is 847, which is on the second page, the fourth one from the top. This is a bill that allows Georgia psychologists to participate in a compact. Okay. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
No, ma'am. No
Okay.
questions. Next bill.
Okay. The other bill is 713, which is on the third page, the fourth one from the top. And this is the bill that allows for more of our very bright, ineligible students who have high SAT and ACT scores to receive the Zell Miller going into college rather than retroactively. And there is an amendment to be made on this, and I support the amendment.
No questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to House Bill 714, and it takes the percentage for the SAT from 91st to 92nd, which is more in keeping with the percentage that students at accredited schools are required on their GPA. Homeschool students don't have a GPA.
All right, you've heard the amendment. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of adopting the amendment? Any opposed? It's done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Ms. Cannon.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you on the top of page 3, under Modified Structure Rule, House Bill 755. This bill establishes a pilot program for opioids and HIV. Thank you.
No questions, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, you do have questions, Mr. Coomer.
Thank you. Representative Cannon, do you have a cost estimate for this bill or a fiscal note?
The fiscal note has it at $389,000 for 3 years total.
Can you provide that? Can you give me a copy of it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I got to catch up. Y'all hold on. No more questions, Ms. Cannon.
Thank you.
Mr. F. Station, sorry.
problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm going to go through 5 bill requests as fast as a lawyer is able. My first is House Bill 790 on page 3, or modified structured. This is House Bill 790. This is recommendations from the Court Reform Council. Mr. Coomer and Ms. Oliver served on that. The next is just below that, House Bill 821 on page 3. This is, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that is not what I'm requesting today. So it's actually 4. The next is on page 4 at the top, House Bill 896. These are recommendations from the Bar Fiduciary section regarding guardianships. Below that, House Bill 897. This is the Georgia Power of Attorney Act cleanup language. And at the bottom of page 4, last bill, House Bill 929. This is the MOST sales tax applying only to Atlanta and at Atlanta's request. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Estration, the last one you mentioned, the Atlanta most tax, I think, is that just a renewal or a different tax?
Yes, sir.
Just
That is
simple
a
renewal.
renewal, just an extension from 3 to 6 opportunities for it to be in place.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And that is also by voter agreement.
No more questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Teasley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the last page under structured rule, third one down, just coming to ask for the House Bill 664, which would double our income tax deduction for contributing to the College 529 plan.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rakestraw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I have 3 bills to request, and they're all for the children. So the first one is H.R. 913, and it is a House study, joint study committee with the Senate to look at pre-arrest diversion programs to start diverting people that have mental health and or co-occurring addiction into treatment. And that's on page 2. At the top of page 1, I have House Bill 833. This is a bill that the surveyors have asked me to carry, and this is to change the hydrology requirements in their education and replace it with something more consistent with what they're actually doing. And the next one is H.R. 447 at the top of page 1, and it declares pornography a public health concern to help with the sex trafficking industry and the demand side of the business.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I lost one of you, Mr. Tillery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you Senate Bill 131 on the back of page 4, last one above structured rules. It's just this bill is just a mule for a wagon full of house improvements.
Mr. Tillery, how many times have you been here?
Twice.
I'm not going to do but one Senate bill before day 28.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to come back until like...
That's fine. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate you allowing me to be here today.
Thank you. Y'all. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was asking for House Bill 895. It allows for the nipping in the bud the young people abusing dextromethorphan, and the grocers and everyone were in agreement with the bill. Thank you.
And remember, if you have a question on a particular bill, raise your hand because everybody's lights lit up. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for two bills this morning. Third page, HB 818. This deals with a new charge that sort of hitting the professional providers, healthcare providers. It's a virtual credit card where they're charging anywhere from 2.5% to 5%. That goes to our bottom line, and that's going to increase healthcare cost. This bill only says that there needs to be transparency. They notify the provider and give them a choice. So it's a transparency and choice bill. And then also on page 2, HB 518, eminent domain. This deals with charges by, unfortunately, DOT and municipalities that range from $1,000 to $5,000 per linear mile for fiber companies. This will really help getting fiber into the rural areas and broadband. Thank you, sir.
You repeat that cost figure.
Sir?
Repeat that cost figure.
$1,000 per linear mile for rural, $5,000 for urban.
What's the $100 for?
Reducing it to $100.
No more questions. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's proper time, I'd like to put my name by HB 732, which is Representative Silcock's bill that she's carrying for the Attorney General.
Mr. A. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 775, modified open, top of the sheet on page 2. This is a bill for the Real Estate Commission. First time I've brought this bill out. Back in about 10 years or so ago, after the real estate collapse under the Dodd-Frank Act in Washington, they started regulating the appraisal companies and appraisal management companies. The appraisal management companies were that third-party intermediary between appraisers and the lenders. Because of the problems that happened at that time, they wanted to do some very strict regulations about how they do their business on the appraisals. The Georgia Real Estate and Appraisal Board monitors this, and this bill is the first one since 2010, brings them back into compliance so they can do the rules and regulations to be in compliance with the federal law. If not, then the appraisers in the state of Georgia will have to follow. They'll have to be under the thumb of the federal government instead of the state real estate and appraisers board. Be glad to answer any questions on that bill. If not, second bill would be
right. Go.
Second bill, House Bill 410. Brought that yesterday. This is the condominium, the HOA fees that some of these condos and all are using for revenue generators. The current law is $10. This thing was hashed out, and I understand that there's an amendment that might be proposed tomorrow on that bill. And then last but not least, House Bill 898 on the last page under modified structured. This would allow the Revenue Department to create for the businesses in Georgia that have over 100 vehicles in a fleet so that they could simplify their process and pay the state for a fleet tag and issue them to their fleets.
Go back to 410.
Yes, sir.
I was told that there was some disagreement between sides on that one. Y'all, the reduction of 250 to 100 is mine. Is that what's causing the problem?
Not causing me a problem.
I knew it wouldn't cause you one.
You know, this thing was, this issue has been rambled around, and what was happening, the state for years has had a fee set for $10, and this is to get a statement of accounts, which is, in this day and time, is only pushing a button. And what they're doing at the last minute, they're coming up with a statement of accounts on HOA fees, and they're charging extravagant fees up into the hundreds of dollars, and they're using things like expedited fees and things like this to add to it. and just didn't seem to be right to be able to have to pay to show up at a closing, and then you're surprised with another several $100 bill, and then the buyer and the seller have to negotiate who's going to pay for that, and a lot of real estate transactions
That's
fall
good,
through.
that's good, that's good. I'm going to assume that the amended version I have is the one change to 100.
That's exactly as per your request.
All right, I am going to give them another opportunity or another day to let me find out what the problem is, and so I'll do it for next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dempsey. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Fleming, you had a quick, never mind, wave. Ms. Dempsey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the bottom of page 2, the second bill from the bottom, HB 647, this is a continuing to look at a pilot to deal with weight loss management, drugs, medications, basically adding them into the formulary is the goal, but DCH has worked very closely with us, and if we could do a 2-year pilot for 1,000 of our state employees and teachers who are more than 70% are obese and overweight, and this is going to include counseling as well as coverage for the medication.
We just did the bariatric one yesterday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that was a 2-year program that we're extending 3 more years.
3 more years for the surgery, but
And
this
so
is...
am I going to have enough information after 2 years of this one that I don't have to extend it?
It is felt that you will. The other thing, some of the most important, I think, language in this legislation is at the very end of the bill, where it says that should sufficient funds come forward for coverage, the pilot will be terminated.
Mr. Martin.
Chairman Dempsey, we have these various trials. Am I not turned on? I was wondering, has there been a thought about doing a trial of actually providing gym memberships to people that is proven in the private sector that if you get weight off that way and change a lifestyle as opposed to just doing it through medication, is it not true that historically health professionals have said medical diets don't work as well as those that engage physically? I was just wondering about a trial in that area.
One of the requirements to participate in this measure is you have a BMI of 27 or greater. You also must participate in the wellness program, agree to pays, and agree to reporting requirements. So it's pretty tightly drawn. And in wellness, I mean, I think our state health benefit plan is constantly coming out with all kinds of tips and things we can do, and they do include exercise and walking.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The answer to your question is there are about 4 new medicines out, and they can usually tell within 4 months to 6 months whether people are responding on those medicines. If they're not responding by that time, the medicines will not help. And to the other representatives' answers, many of these people have comorbidities, and you really wouldn't want them going to a gym to start off with if the medicines work and they lose the amount of body weight that some of these medicines can accomplish, then they could join the gym, but it wouldn't be safe before.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other bill too, if that's possible. It is on page 4, 5th or so down from the top, HB 906, and this is for DFACS, and this is to protect the private information of our foster and former foster parents to help, particularly in the recruiting and retaining of those parents, but to afford them the exact same privacy that state employees have from open records.
Ms. Ballinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked for House Bill 798. It does deal with license plates, and I do apologize, but with an existing license plate and just kind of clarifying so our volunteer firefighters can once again get the firefighter tag that they have enjoyed for many, many years since the firefighter tag was introduced. Also, it has a public safety component in that it allows for terminated firefighters to just simply take their tag to the tax commissioner and get a regular tag, as opposed to requiring the fire chief to actually go and retrieve the tag from the terminated firefighter.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Chairman. Last page, House Resolution 1103 and House Resolution 1104. These are the yearly conveyance and easement bills or resolutions that we passed out of committee. And all of the individuals that have those have been contacted, and there was no problems about those. Thank you.
Mr. Beverly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for HB 745, bottom of page 1, modified open rule. And on the second page, HB 852, Representative Smith's bill. And lastly, if you would indulge, the middle of page 3, HB 755, Representative Park Cannon's bill. Thank you.
What was the last one?
HB 755.
Ms. Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to bring to your attention House Bill 513, Representative Dickerson's bill.
Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask that we adopt the rule sub for 817, since I interrupted Representative Clark in his presentation, just so it's eligible for the list as you go through it. I don't think we adopted the rule substitute.
We didn't.
I would like to move on the rule substitute, and then whether
Have
that
a
just make it eligible.
motion and a second to move on the rule substitute for LC 411465S, and again, it's down there in the 19th line. That used to be or is and we struck in the course of business. We've got a move and a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask about two. The first one is on page 2 under modified open. House Bill 890 simply makes it a misdemeanor if you use the fire emergency exit to shoplift. The second one, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is on the first page. The first one under modified open, House Bill 392. This deals with our Move On When Ready program to help high school kids get college credit by dual enrollment. The bill only corrects a mistake, what I believe is an oversight in the code dealing with one college, that's Georgia Military College. They actually offer 5 learning periods during the year for students, and this would make it possible for those students to continue going to school rather than having to take a break.
Good bill. No more questions. Up here? Okay. Let me go ahead and apologize. I know tomorrow's Friday. And I know some of us have to get home early, but you ain't going to. Under open rule, this is the agenda for tomorrow, February the 23rd, the 26th day. 26. And we got a boatload of bills. Under open rule, HB 833. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed, same sign. It's on. Under modified open, HB 809. Do I hear a second? All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed, same sign. Modified open HB 825. Got two moves, so it, all those in favor signify by aye. See if I can get him and Mr. Hitchens from coming, we can get out of here on time. Under modified open, HB 847. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? Under modified open, here you go, HB 867, helping myself again. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? Under modified structure, third page, HB 732. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Watch this. HB 784. Y'all know how much that hurts my heart. After I stood in the well yesterday and told y'all this, we got 221 different tags. We got one more. We got, we're going to have more than one more. We're going to have, some of them will be taking the place of tags, but that gets it because forestry got it. I'm sorry. Well, somebody tried to save me when we did that pie, because I figured it'd kill me. And somebody offered to take the pie. Okay. We're trying here. Did we vote on that one? All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed, same sign. I ain't even gonna count it. Under modified structure, HB 790. All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? It's on. Modified structure. HB 815. That's a new tag. That's 222. In case y'all are wondering, that's 222. And I'm gonna get you. No, the one named Martin. Okay. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Aye. Modified structure HB 818. Any opposition? All those in favor signify by aye. It's on. Under modified structure HB 830. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Under structured, HB 664. Do I hear a second? All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Under structured, HB 793. All those in favor signify by aye. It's under structured, HB 849. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? That's 12 or 13. That'd be enough.